So in our series from the book of Proverbs, we've been tackling some challenging and some rather controversial subjects like anger and alcohol and sex and the tongue. Today we're going to continue in that same vein. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite subject, money. And I appreciate Alan. Alan did a great job choosing songs that pick up on that theme of God is greater and more valuable than anything, and we offer all that we have to God. So excellent job there, Alan. So, we pick up our thoughts and our attitudes about money kind of early in life. There's a story of a little boy who was with mom at the grocery store, and they're coming through the checkout line, and the cashier decides to be generous, gives the boy a candy bar. And mom, doing what parents often say, "What do you say to the lady?" And the little boy says, "Charge it." Where'd he learn that? That's what mom usually says, charge it. No, she wanted, thank you, right? And then there was another little girl who was mom at the ATM, and mom was letting the little girl push the right buttons on the ATM, and suddenly out comes all this money into the tray, and the little girl squeals, "We won! We won!" We wish it worked that way, right? I don't know if you caught that article in the Syracuse newspaper about the guys who recently got $280,000 out of a few of these ATM machines. Woo! Pretty crazy. The Wall Street Journal published an article with an anonymous quote that I thought was really good. The quote said that money is an article to be used as a universal passport to everywhere except heaven, and a universal provider of everything except happiness. That's pretty good, isn't it? The writer might have added that money's also the provoker of covetousness and competition, and it's a wonderful servant, but it is a terrible master. What the Bible said so long ago is true. The love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. That gets misquoted a lot, right? But it is the love of money that is a root of all kinds of evil. Clement of Alexandria, a Christian theologian born during the 2nd century, said, "Wealth is like a viper, which is harmless if a person knows how to take hold of it, but if they do not, it will entwine around his hand and bite him." And on a positive note, Billy Graham said, "If a person gets his attitude towards money straight, it'll help straighten out almost every other part of his life." So Solomon, the writer of Proverbs, the wise man, I think he would have liked those quotes, even though they're not found in Proverbs. But Proverbs is a book of practical wisdom, so it's not surprising that it speaks a lot about money and the use of it. We live in a world where money's a fact. It's a fact of life. And the ability to learn how to deal with it is really, really important. Wisdom is required. So money can either be the greatest of blessings or money can be the greatest of curses. It depends on whether or not we learn how to be wise about our pursuit of it and also wise about our use of it. As you probably know, there's tons of books out there. Books, seminars, videos on how to get rich, right? And most of the time, if you get those things, you're making rich the one who made the presentation, right? You're not really making yourself rich. But that's not the case about the wisdom found in Proverbs. For one thing, it's free of charge. You don't have to buy it. Another thing, it's God's wisdom, so we know it's true. And so this wisdom about money is scattered throughout the Proverbs, lots of different ones in different places. But when we gather them together, they form kind of principles. And I want to share with you a few of these principles today. Principle number 1, put your trust in God and honor God with whatever you have. Proverbs 11:28 says, "Anyone trusting in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like foliage." And then Proverbs 18, Verse 10, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are protected. The wealth of the rich is his fortified city. In his imagination, it's like a high wall. Before his downfall, a person's heart is proud, but humility comes before honor. And so these proverbs, they clearly delineate the fall of those who put their trust in money. And riches, unfortunately, can become a source of pride. But no matter how rich or poor we might be, we must be humble before the Lord. And we must trust in the Lord first and foremost. And we realize that everything comes from God. Everything is God's to start with, and everything comes from God. And none of us would be able to have anything or be able to earn anything if God didn't give us the ability to do so. So before we do anything else with our money, we should first trust God with it. Proverbs 3, 9 and 10 says, honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first produce of your entire harvest. Then your barns will be completely filled and your vats will overflow with new wine. So this principle of giving God out of our first fruits is a principle that comes out of the Old Testament and out of Judaism. God gave it to the Jews early in Deuteronomy 26, 1 through 11. You can look at that. But within this principle, again, is this understanding that everything comes from God and is God's, and that we give back to God. And giving to God first, we honor God and we show our trust in God. So when the harvest comes in, we give to God out of the first fruits of the harvest rather than saying, you know what, let's wait and see how it goes, right? Rather than saying, well, let's see if there's anything left over. No, we give God out of the first fruits, not out of the leftovers. And as we start our budgeting process, right, we should start first and foremost by deciding how much of this are we giving back to God. It's His to start with. And then we learn to live on the rest of it. These verses from Proverbs 3 suggest that if the first fruits practice is followed, there'll always be, plenty of produce and wine in the barn. And verse 10 has caught the attention of those who believe in the health and wealth gospel, and you might be familiar with that. And according to their understanding of Scripture and otherwise, they say that you put these principles into practice, and if you do so, you'll be rich. You'll not be lacking in any way, right? The name it, claim it kind of folks. But when we look carefully at this, we notice that as we give to honor God, we are not giving to manipulate God, right? We're not giving so that we get. God's promise is that when we put Him first and honor Him with the first fruits, that He'll make sure that we have what we need. This is God's principle. This is God's promise. This is what Jesus said in Matthew 6 in verse 33 when He said, put first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be given to you as well. He's been talking about don't worry about all these other earthly, physical things, right? The Bible as a whole presents the truth that some righteous people may be rich, and other righteous people may be poor. The truth is that wealth isn't always what is best for us, and that wealth has been the ruin of many people. Also, we have to understand there are lots of forms of blessings that are far more valuable than money and possessions. And that's why Jesus taught us to lay up treasure in heaven rather than lay up treasure on the earth. When we get to heaven someday, I don't think anybody's going to say, you know what, man, I wish I had more stuff when I lived back there on earth. I don't think anybody's going to be saying that. I think they're going to forget about earthly things, right? And it'll be all about the heavenly things. But sadly, there'll be some there in heaven who say, man, I sure wish I had laid up more here in heaven, right? I sure wish I'd had a better priority of putting God first even more. And so the first principle about being wise about money is to, number one, put our trust in God, and honor God with our wealth. The second principle is live within your means. In other words, don't spend more than you make or more than you have. Our government needs to learn a little bit about this, right? This means we should be good stewards who know how to balance income with our obligations and to have a balanced budget, right? As a good budget for us Christians begins with, number one, God. Putting God first and saying, what's God's part? And then the next good thing is, what am I going to save? And then, how am I going to live on the rest? Now, Proverbs 21:20 says, precious treasure and oil are in the dwelling of a wise person, but a fool consumes them. The NIV puts it a little more modern way. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. When we wisely build into the budget savings, emergencies aren't as big an emergency, right? Because we have something in store. We're not consuming everything every month. We're laying some aside for the future. Now, another important part about living within our means is to avoid borrowing, to do our best to stay out of debt. Proverbs 22:7 says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is the slave to the lender. Now, the word slave here might sound kind of extreme to us. What, slave? But when you think about it, it's actually true. A slave doesn't have the right to do anything they want to do. They have to do what they're told. And the second we get into debt, the one we're in debt to becomes the master, and we can't just do what we want to do. We've got to follow the orders of the one we're in debt to, right? If we don't make our payments on time, they can charge us higher interest, they can charge us penalties, and then they can even come and take away the thing, right? The car, the house, whatever it is that we've bought on time. Now, most of us are not going to be able to buy a house without going into debt for it. And there's some debt that's better than others. House debt's good if you've used wisdom, making sure that you're not upside down on the thing, right? You're not borrowed too much of it at too high an interest rate, or that it isn't too big a portion of your income so that you're house poor, you don't have what's left over, what needed for other things, right? And if you have to get out of it, you can get out from under it because the value is in the house. So that's a good kind of debt if you're going to take on debt. Proverbs 22:26 and 27 says, don't be one of those who enter agreements, who put up security for loans, if you have nothing with which to pay. Duh, right? Even your bed will be taken from under you. Now, credit card debt is crippling millions and millions of Americans and other people in other countries as well. And it's crippling especially now because of the interest rates. They're higher than they were a couple of years ago. And so the debt is growing faster and faster for these individuals. Now, sometimes people get into credit card debt because of an emergency. Something broke and they didn't have money to fix it. Or maybe they lost a job and they were living on credit for a little while. But unfortunately, many people get into debt because they bought things that they didn't have the money for, right? They wanted the thing now, hoping to be able to pay for it later. Sometimes there's this motivation to pretend to be wealthier than you are. The old saying, trying to keep up with the Joneses. I don't know who the Joneses were, but I guess they had a lot back then or something, right? My youngest daughter's now a Jones, so we've got to be careful about using that phrase, right? Keeping up with the Joneses. But that notion of, I'm trying to show off, I'm trying to keep up with them, I'm trying to outdo them, can be a trap we get into. I remember my mother's cousins, my second cousins, they got into this boat race, right? One bought a 16-foot boat, the other bought a 16-foot boat. Then the next year, one bought a 19-foot boat, and the other bought a 19-foot boat. And then they went on to 23-foot cruisers, right? then one had to give up because one was the owner of a business that was rather lucrative, and the other was just an hourly wage person. So eventually he couldn't keep up, but he was trying to. And how often we try to do that, right? But those we're trying to keep up with or trying to impress sometimes have bigger debt problems than we do, right? Why get into that race? Self-control, contentment are necessary. And once we've gotten ourselves into debt, we need to work hard and quick to get out from under it. And there are several of us here in the congregation who are ready to help people who need some help figuring out how to develop a budget, how to live by a budget, maybe how to get out of the debt that they're in. Just ask, and we can help. Another important debt that Proverbs warns us about is taking on the debt of others. Sometimes we're approached by people who want us to co-sign for a loan of theirs, right? But we must be very careful about doing so because we are obligating ourselves to pay that loan if they don't. Proverbs 11:15 says, if someone puts up security for a stranger, he will suffer for it, but the one who hates such agreements is protected. We need to protect ourselves. Proverbs 6:1-5, the wise man instructs us what to do if we've gotten ourselves into that situation where we've taken on the debt of someone else, or the obligation at least. My son, if you've put up security for your neighbor or entered into an agreement with a stranger, if you've been snared by the words of your mouth, trapped by the words of your mouth, do this, my son, and free yourself. For you've put yourself in your neighbor's power. Go humble yourself. Plead with your neighbor. Don't give sleep to your eyes or slumber to your eyelids. Escape like a gazelle from a hunter, like a bird from a hunter's trap. You notice the urgency there, right? And you notice the hunter lingo here, right? Like an animal that's been entrapped in a hunter's trap. You need to get out of it, and animals will do almost anything they can to get out of the trap that they're in. Now, we might decide to co-sign for a close friend or a family member. We might decide to do something like that, but as we do so, realize we are obligating ourselves. And we have no control over whether they're going to follow through with their part of the obligation. But guess what? You're going to be required to if they don't. So Proverbs warns, be careful about it. Principle number 3. This is a good one. Don't sacrifice what's truly valuable for the sake of money. As you probably know, there are many, many things more valuable than silver and gold. And this is one of the things we've been emphasizing in this series. And what's one of those things that's more valuable than silver and gold? Wisdom. God's wisdom. Happy is the man who finds wisdom, who acquires understanding, for she is more profitable than silver, her revenue better than gold. She is more precious than jewels. Nothing you desire can equal her. Whatever that materialistic stuff is that our heart is so set on, it has no comparison with God and His wisdom. Another thing more valuable than money is a good reputation. Proverbs 22:1 says, a good name is to be chosen over great wealth. Favor is better than silver and gold. A good name is a priceless asset. And no amount of money in the world can buy a good name. But guess what? The pursuit of wealth in wrong ways can take away a good name in a hurry. Here's a great proverb, I think, that gives a warning about sacrificing what's truly available for the sake of money. Proverbs 23:4-5. Don't wear yourself out to get rich because you know better. Stop. I love that. Just stop. As soon as your eyes fly to it, it disappears, for it makes wings for itself and it flies like an eagle into the sky. So these verses, should not be used as an excuse not to work. That's not what the Proverbs is trying to say. We're actually going to get to that subject later in our series on laziness. That's not what this is saying here. It is saying that it's important for us to understand when enough is enough. This proverb reveals the truth that wealth is often a fleeting thing, and the fact that it isn't worth the sacrifice of our health or our families or even our lives. So there has to be this balance between work and leisure, and the wise person recognizes that balance. Because in the end, what is the use of wealth, of money, if you don't have any time to enjoy it, and you don't have anybody to enjoy it with, or it brings a premature death to you? Those who pursue wealth are often thinking about the bottom line, right? What's the bottom line? The bottom line. Well, according to Proverbs, the over-pursuit of wealth at the detriment of everything else is not wise. And going along with that is principle number 4. Learn to be content with enough. Proverbs 30:7 through 9 contains a powerful prayer that I think we would do well to pray. 2 things I ask of you. Don't deny them to me before I die. Keep falsehood and deceitful words far from me. Give me neither poverty nor wealth. Feed me with the food I need. Otherwise, I might have too much and deny you, saying, "Who's the Lord?" Or I might have nothing and steal, profaning the name of my God. So this prayer kind of sums up the proverb sentiment about money. And that is, don't give me too much. And please, God, don't give me too little. Because either of them may cause me to lose my focus on important spiritual priorities. If we have too little, we may be tempted to sin in our attempt to get what we need. If we have too much, unfortunately, it can lead to all kinds of things. Just the free gaining of the Lord, or a lot of pride and self-centeredness. Proverbs 16:8 says, "Better a little with righteousness than great income with injustice." Proverbs 15:16 says, "Better a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure with turmoil." And so the pursuit of wealth and trying to get rich sometimes leads to injustice, where we exploit others. And then this great treasure that we amass oftentimes brings much turmoil and many problems. Learning to be content when we have enough is wise. And it's a safeguard. And it's what the Apostle Paul said when he was writing to Timothy in that first letter of his. He said, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with these. But those who want to be rich fall into temptation, a trap, many foolish and harmful desires which plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and by craving it, some have wandered away from the faith and have pierced themselves with many griefs." There's a lot there, isn't there? What are the main points? Number one, you brought nothing into the world, you're taking nothing out of it, right? When the great John D. Rockefeller died, there was a reporter who kept asking one of his aides, "How much did he leave? How much did he leave?" He wanted to know the massive amount of money Rockefeller left behind. Finally, the aide just said, "He left it all." It doesn't matter if it's big or little. We leave it all behind. So the point isn't to get as much as you can, because you're not taking it with you. Secondly, Paul said, if we have what we need, then we should be content with that. You talk about a minimalist, right? Some people like the simple life and the minimalist kind of thing, right? How about minimalist? Food and clothing. Now, we might need a little more than that. How about some shelter, right? That would be an extra. But so many of the things we think we need are not really needs. You know, they're really more of wants and comforts. Last of all, Paul said, the desire to get rich is dangerous, physically, spiritually. So we all need to be very careful about that. The love of money, the pursuit of wealth has led many people to ruin and destruction. And along these lines, Proverbs warns us against the get-rich-quick schemes. The promise of easy money gained has always been a temptation, and of course modern technology makes it even more widespread and more easily exploited, right? We've all gotten those letters from the African prince who's got millions and millions of dollars, who just needs a little help to get it to the United States. And if we'll just help him out, he'll give us half of it. Wow, that's exciting. How easy, right? All you have to do is share your bank information, right? And they'll make the transfer. But we all know the way that works, right? Rather than putting money into our bank account, they take what little money is in there and they take it away. That's the way that works. But oh, it's so enticing. Proverbs 13:11, wealth obtained by fraud will dwindle, but whoever earns it through labor will multiply it. Proverbs 15:27, the one who profits dishonestly troubles his household, but the one who hates bribes will live. Proverbs 20:21, an inheritance gained prematurely will not be blessed ultimately. When we earn our income through hard, honest work, then we understand a little better the value of money. And we're a little more careful with good stewardship of it, right? But when money comes too quickly, or in too great an amount, and we don't have the wisdom and we don't have the self-control necessary, it causes trouble and hardship. The amazing thing to me is the majority of people who have won the lottery, the majority, 70%, 70% are bankrupt within a couple of years. Many of them are divorced. Many of them die after having won the lottery. Somebody kills them to get the money, right? The truth of the matter is most of us would not be able to handle sudden wealth. So give thanks to the Lord. Don't make me rich. Don't make me poor. Just give me what I need, right? And then finally, the last principle I want to bring out is be generous towards the poor. There's a simple spiritual principle involved with money, and it goes like this. You can't be blessed by keeping it for yourself. It's kind of counterintuitive, right? But it's the spiritual principle. Those who try to hoard it, lose it. Those who are generous with it, end up with plenty, right? So Proverbs says it like this in Proverbs 11:24 and 25. One person gives freely, yet gains more. Another withholds what is right, only to become poor. A generous person will be enriched, and the one who gives a drink of water will receive water. So here you see that clearly counterintuitive spiritual principle of God. The one who gives freely gains more. The one who is generous is the one who is enriched. Now, those verses don't mention giving to the poor directly, but other proverbs do. Let's look at a few of them. Proverbs 14:21. The one who despises his neighbor sins, but whoever shows kindness to the poor will be happy. Proverbs 14:31. The one who oppresses the poor person insults his maker, but one who is kind to the needy honors him. And then one more. Proverbs 19:17. This takes it even a step further. Kindness to the poor is a loan to the Lord, and he, the Lord, will give a reward to the lender. In other words, giving to the poor is giving to the Lord. And that might bring back memories of something Jesus taught, right? In Matthew 25, when you help that person who needed food or clothing or whatever, a place, you did it for him. And when you didn't, you didn't help that person. You weren't kind. You weren't generous. You weren't being generous to God. So how can we show our generosity to the poor? Well, it starts with having a heart of compassion for those who are caught in a cycle of poverty, realizing that there are many different reasons why people end up in a position of poverty. From that place of compassion, and with a commitment to honor God and obey God, we then try to set aside some of our income to help those who are in need. And we can do so by helping the person we have contact with who we may know is in need. Or we may do so through an agency that helps the poor, or we get involved in that agency in some way. I'm thankful for the outreach ministries we have right here in our own church family. And I'm thankful for those who serve in those ministries, whether it be our clothing ministry or our food pantry and bread ministry. As we're involved in these things, we're trying to alleviate people's real need. At the same time, we're trying to build bridges, relationship. We're trying to share the good news of Jesus. I know God is pleased by that. So let's do a quick review. God's plan for financial management and stewardship actually is rather simple. That doesn't mean it's easy. Number one, honor God, right? Put your trust in God, honor God with everything you have. Number two, live within your means. And here's 4 simple parts to that, right? Living within your means. Budget carefully, give generously, save proportionally, and borrow sparingly. Number 3, don't sacrifice what's truly valuable for the sake of money, realizing there are things that are way more valuable than money, like God and His wisdom, like a good reputation, and like our health and our families. Number 4, learn to be content with enough. The love of money, the desire to be rich leads to danger and destruction. Watch out for the get-rich-quick schemes, right? Keep the right perspective on money and possessions. Jesus said, watch out for all kinds of greed, for a person's life doesn't consist in the abundance of his possessions. That's not what life's all about. Abundant life is much different than that. And then finally, be generous towards the poor. Generosity leads to blessings. Hoarding leads to poverty, spiritually and otherwise, right? By sharing with others, we give to God Himself. And an important truth to remember, this is Proverbs 22:2. Rich and poor have this in common: the Lord makes them all. Rich and poor have this in common: they are the Lord's, right? And the Lord is over them. Whether we're rich or poor, we're God's. Let's honor God. Let's trust God with our lives and with everything that we have. Well, I hope we've wised up a little bit today, maybe, about money and our use of it. It'll serve us well. And again, if you need help in these areas, I know it can be humbling and embarrassing even to be in a situation you're in, but without help, you probably won't get out of it, right? So ask for some help. And we've all been there. We've all struggled in life to make ends meet. So we'll be glad to help with that. So